A father exiles his disobedient son to a special boarding school, something of a torture center, where they teach aggression control. Based on true events, the film begins with the protagonist, a teenager named Fran, video chatting with his best friend and girlfriend. He is drinking beer and smoking in front of the computer. Suddenly, his father, Luis, enters the room. He has to get up early, and the loud noise is preventing him from sleeping. The teenager rudely snaps at the old man to get lost, but the father does not leave. He tries to talk to his son while his friends wait patiently. In the morning, a sleep-deprived and irritated Luis goes to work, managing a store. The slacker son, meanwhile, is having fun blowing off school. He is smoking with friends, listening to music, boozing, and making out with his girlfriend. Later, the father is informed that Fran dropped out of school long ago, and then the hospital calls asking him to pick up his offspring. He got into a fight. The man has to go to the emergency room, where the parents of Migu, Fran's friend, are already waiting. They express sentiments to the effect that Fran is a bad influence on their child. After waiting for the exam to finish, Luis collects his son. He tries to talk to him on the way home, but in the underground garage, the boy snaps and tries to leave. The man catches up to his son, but the teenager yells at him and delivers a slap, after which he runs away. When Luis returns home in the evening, his son is already gone. He took off to a disco to cut loose with friends, dance, drink, and snort illicit substances. The father lights the candles on a birthday cake alone. His son has turned 17. Worried that he cannot find common ground with his child, Luis Googles ways to communicate with teenagers. He stumbles upon an ad for the Simca program, a special psychological correction for aggressive behavior. Parents of troubled teens share their experiences, how difficult it was to communicate with their children before, and how easy it became after. While watching the videos, Luis loses track of time, and then, at night, a stoned Fran wanders, staggering down the hallway. The guy freezes at his father's slightly open door, but the father switches off the light to avoid another unpleasant conversation. The next day, Luis goes to the Simca presentation. An imposing coach gives an inspiring speech about how discipline will help instill real values and determination for business success in spoiled kids. While he listens to the presentation, his son is hanging on the phone, swigging alcohol. At his mother's instigation, Migu disowns his friend, and the girlfriend hints that they had nothing serious, so he shouldn't be making long-term plans. Upset, Fran continues to drown his sorrows. That is exactly how his father finds him that evening. At night, two specially trained men drag the half-naked teenager out of his bedroom. He fights back, kicks, screams, and calls for his father, but Luis has already prepared a suitcase with his things and sees his son off to the boarding school at the door. The guy is thrown into a minivan and driven along a scenic serpentine road far away from the city. There, he is met by Father Oscar, the head of the supervisors. The man is displeased that the new arrival is barefoot and half-naked. Students must maintain discipline and arrive dressed. He also dislikes the handcuffs on the teenager. Oscar orders them removed. Fran takes this gesture as a friendly one and insults the guard, but the supervisor instantly restores the social hierarchy. He twists the brazen child's arm, slams his face against the wall, and reads out the main rules, among which respectful silence in the presence of elders is mandatory. The right to speak is a privilege. Fran is shaved bald, given a uniform, and taken to the rest of the group. Children with bloody marks on their chins are watching a daily video. They welcome the new guy with a rehearsed chant. When Fran tries to speak to his neighbor, Father Oscar hits pause, and the kids jump up from their seats, reciting the rule about silence. Discouraged by such coordination, the protagonist looks around glumly, realizing that they won to be coddling him here. The subsequent schedule includes strictly regulated useful labor for the good of society, assembling clothespins, as well as group lunches in the cafeteria. Fran observes his new comrades, trying to memorize the text of the mandatory chants. On television, they play clips in which psychologists drill theses about acceptable behavior into their heads. Among the supervisors, Father Nando also stands out. Oscar reprimands him for his appearance and the gum, with which he sets a bad example for the students. The teenagers also talk with a psychologist who asks them not only about hidden fears but also about their relationships with their parents. Fran admits that he misses his father, but he is saddened by the fact that Luis never really showed paternal love, including toward his mother, who left the family when he was little. The boarding school's teaching staff, led by Oscar, discusses the upcoming Freedom Day, a sort of holiday for the students designed to show what their life could be like outside the institution. Nando, as a newcomer, does not know what this is, and his colleagues poke a little fun at him, to which he reacts with a pathetic speech. Later, during lunch, Nando takes out his anger on one of the students and smashes his face against the table while the other children hurriedly eat, pretending nothing is happening. In the course of the disciplinary process, Nando gets carried away and sprays the child's eyes with pepper gas. This does not please the director of the boarding school. Rich parents do not pay money to have their children crippled. Oscar manages to hush up the matter, getting off with a light reprimand for the subordinate, reinforcing it by smashing his face against the table. Soon, Fran successfully memorizes the rules. However, he is not yet familiar with the punishments, so one day after lights out, he sneaks out of his room. Unnoticed by the guards, he descends to the floor below, where he finds the sensory deprivation unit, an area of full or partial isolation from the outside world. Even simple conversations are prohibited here. In one of the rooms, the protagonist sees a teenager tied to a gurney. His eyes and ears are covered, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Fran removes the boy's mask and headphones, and the poor wretch screams for Fran to kill him out of mercy. Frightened by this reaction, Fran runs back, but the guards notice the escape from the bedroom. An alarm is raised. The hunt for him begins. The hero hides in a corner, and when a guard enters, he throws himself at the man, beating him to a bloody pulp until reinforcements twist him into submission. For this act, Father Oscar sentences the entire group to punishment. The children are placed face down on the floor, their chins pressed against the ground. While they lie motionless, supervisors intermittently turn on lights and loud music. The situation is reminiscent of the Pokemon episode that caused epileptic seizures. Having served the punishment, Fran receives a bloody mark on his chin. At the same time, the children's parents gather for their own rehabilitation program led by psychologist Helena. Luis explains that he cannot find common ground with his son, to which the doctor replies that dialogue is a two-way street. Therefore, not only must children learn submission, but parents are also obliged to participate in their lives. As a successful example, Helena cites Sandra and her parents. The girl has completed the program. The adults recount how their lives changed after their daughter returned. However, the story ends with the girl wetting herself and her mother leading her away. Returning home, Louis, as advised by the psychologist, enters his son's room. On his computer, he watches a music video in which his son is fooling around with friends. Louis himself glimpses into the frames. His offspring secretly filmed him at work. The clip brings a smile to the father's face, and the next morning he drives to the boarding school to pick up his son. However, Oscar shows him the video of the guard being beaten and convinces him that Fran is not yet ready to adapt to society. While watching another video, the youth makes a joke that the supervisors overhear. The group is led to another punishment. Because they fail to grasp the theses repeated time and again, they must spend over 24 hours standing with their hands tied and eyes blindfolded. Only the one who lasts the longest will pass the test. The rest will be sent to the sensory isolator. Those who squat down are removed by the guards. Meanwhile, the parents undergo another training session on mutual understanding. Louis gets to know Sandra's parents better. They are worried about their daughter's mental health but hope the training will help. The next day, the remaining teenagers are fed, but there is one portion less than the number of captives. Unable to reach an agreement, the children quarrel, and the guards confiscate all the food. Closer to nightfall, as the second day begins, Helena comes to the cages. The woman films the children to gather evidence of the cruel methods used at the boarding school. Nanda catches her and takes her to Oscar. But the director sees nothing wrong with the data leak. All these methods are legal. On the third day, Fran is the last one left standing and returns to the measured life of the schedule. Meanwhile, Louis establishes a warm relationship with Sandra's mother. They have lunch together. Their acquaintance grows into a romantic interest. But while she is kissing Louis in the parking lot, her daughter watches the torture videos posted by Helena. Unable to withstand the flood of memories of what she endured, the girl throws herself off the roof right in front of her father, who is immersed in his work. The director reprimands Oscar for the information leak. This leads to a tightening of rules in the regime at the boarding school. The students are literally driven to exhaustion with physical exercises. Some vomit right in the gym. He also continues to practice beatings with the tacit consent of the rest of the teaching staff. All of this leads to a moment where Fran rebels. He freezes in place and refuses to leave the cafeteria. Oscar orders him to be dragged to the sensory isolator. There, the guy is tied up and his eyes and ears are covered. After some time, due to the lack of external information, his brain begins to generate hallucinations, images summoned from the past. The torture ends when the day of freedom arrives. The male and female groups gather in the gym to dance the waltz. An exhausted Fran is also brought in, but he does not participate. Instead, he watches from the side, sitting on a chair. The students paired up waltz on command, but then one of the guys looking at Fran who dared to openly rebel freezes. Others follow his example. Despite Father Oscar's screams and blows, the event is ruined, much to Fran's satisfied smirk. Nanda even has to restrain the boss before he maims someone in his hysteria. Louis admits he wants to take his son out of the boarding school, and the woman says this is the right decision after what they did to her daughter's psyche. The next day, the man arrives at the boarding school. Fran is brought out immediately, without anyone even trying to dissuade the father. The teenager silently gets into the car, not even greeting Louis. On the way home, he stares detachedly out the window. At home, he meets up with a girlfriend, asking how she is doing. He does not spread word about his adventures at the boarding school, only regretting that many children remain in those dungeons. Fran does not wish to speak with his father. True, he has stopped being rude as well. The guy gets rid of memorable items from his room, thus severing the tie with his past self. He does not accept gifts from his father, and in his free time, he screams hanging out of the window into the rainy void of the big city. But one day, standing in the kitchen, he reflexively repeats chants from the boarding school, which provokes a dialogue. Fran accuses his father of intentionally giving him to sadists for torture. Louis objects that he was deceived. After this, he delivers a monologue, admitting to his son that it is also not easy for him to raise him alone after his mother abandoned them, considering both of them unnecessary. And it is hard for the man to admit this, but the son only exacerbates the situation by blaming the father. In the next scene, they drive silently in the car to a certain house. Louis gets out to hand documents to the owners. It is not visible who exactly due to the camera angle. When they drive away, Fran asks, "Was that Mom?" Instead of answering, the father gets out of the car and walks away into the rain. The son catches up to him, and they stand together, hugging and hiding their tears in the rain. Well, friends, I hope you found it interesting. If so, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell to always be aware of new releases. And in the comments, write what you think. Your opinion is really important. See you in the next video.